Hey, happy Monday, everybody. Good evening and welcome to another show here on the Comic Art Live channel. After a very, very busy weekend, I pretty much took the entire day off, everyone. And I know that a lot of people sent me probably about 50, 60 emails that I've got to reply to, texts on Messenger and Facebook and whatnot. So I've got a lot of catching up to do on that. But I can promise you that probably by tomorrow, I will begin replying to all the emails from the feedback I got from this weekend. But just so everybody knows, the internet issue was not a Florida issue at all. While I was in that live stream last night, my daughters decided to be proactive and do some house cleaning in the other side of the house, and we're running a Roomba, and it pulled the power cord out of the router. So live and learn. They will never do that again. So at least when Dad's streaming. So I've got a really interesting guest tonight. As you know, we don't get a chance to talk to creators too often, except when we're doing the Comic Art Live shows. So tonight I've got artist and writer Jason Shawn Alexander as my guest, and I'm going to bring him in from the green room. Hey, Jason, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. Like I said, I'm well rested. I'm ready for the interview. And again, it's really nice to have you on here, man. I hate to say, I can't say I've read a ton of your work, but I've seen a lot of your artwork, and I really, really admire it. So when a mutual friend kind of put us in connection with one another, I'm glad that that worked out so we can have our chat tonight. I think it was Mel. Mel's in the chat right now. There he is. Hey, Mel. Thank you very much. Mel's been out there doing some outreach for me, trying to bring some guests everybody's way. So I certainly appreciate the help, because I don't have a secretary. I need somebody to go out there and do some work for me every now and again. But Jason, so honestly, I'm envious of your office. Everybody knows I've been here in Florida and have nothing on the walls. And I actually was looking for some tape today because I've got some art in sleeves. I was going to tape them up to the wall just to give you some back there. But I'm super envious of your office space because it looks it's so modern, cool. It's everything that I want this office to be when things come together here in Florida. But you mentioned before we got started, you just got into that space not too long ago.
Yeah, I like work. I have to work out of the house. I have small kids, so I think better outside of the house. So I've had different little offices and different painting studios and all that kind of stuff for years, and then this space since last October, and I've just been kind of slowly building it to after a small studio, I realized things kind of needed to expand. I wanted to start writing more as well as doing art, and have a studio mate and kind of expand things. And so yeah, we've been here for a few months, or getting close to a year, but it's been cool.
Awesome. Nick Barucci says you're one of the nicest and best creators in the industry. Nick would not lie.
Nick might lie. He's very kind.
Have you done work for Nick?
I did a book called Dead Irons.
Dead Irons?
It was a horror Western, and that was a blast. It was vampires and werewolves in the Old West. It was great.
That sounds pretty interesting. Right up my alley. I'm a horror guy. My favorite movie is probably Evil Dead or something along those lines. But nope. That's why I've always enjoyed your artwork. Just the moody, atmospheric quality to it. But most of your work kind of falls in that horror genre when you get into the comic side of things. So that's, like I say, that's my sweet spot. I mean, I like spandex, but I like to feel a little bit more down to earth and gritty.
Yeah. Even the fine art when I paint for galleries is darker. I like that aesthetic. It's always been something that's appealed to me.
Mm-hmm. So what's your art background? I mean, are you formally trained, or did you education wise, or did you just kind of self-taught? What were your early mediums of choice?
Self-taught for the most part. I started self-publishing at 19 with a couple of friends, and then got into comics that way. And but I was then I hit kind of a point in my 20s where I couldn't really seem to make the work grow. And at that time, I was being introduced to George Pratt and those kinds of guys. And George was really, he's like a consummate teacher. So online, he was like, "Oh, you should just come out to North Carolina. That's where we're all at." And I was like, "Well, okay." And I moved out to Chapel Hill, and that's where he and Scott Hampton and Kent Williams and all these guys were. And then over the course of about the first year or two, I met Kent, and our situations just worked out where we both needed a place to work. So I wound up sharing a studio with Kent Williams for about four and a half years.
Oh, wow.
And that was essentially a whole level. I essentially kind of got paid to go to art school. Like I was doing like small comic gigs and illustration gigs on, trying to build up stuff. But then I was learning how to paint essentially with Kent. And so self-taught in that I didn't go to a formal school, but I absolutely kind of had mentors and stuff like that along the way.
I mean, that sounds like probably the best start that you could have had to be, have those people around you, to be in in that proximity to Kent Williams for that long. I mean,
yeah,
how amazing an experience would that be? And that's so cool.
Like you said, yeah, it was a full art education. Like my library of art books, expanded 50 times, and he really he helped kind of hone me into being a painter, and then I kind of took a dip from comics for a little while, and I just kind of painted for galleries for a bit. And then about 6-7 years ago, I kind of jumped back into comics like full bore.
Now, when you were, in Kent's studio or working with Pratt, did they kind of give you any of their, stories on proper ways to kind of get into the comics business? I mean, were you getting, hearing things, that their successes and failures, and learning from that really before you kind of jumped back into comics, or what was that like?
Most of my stuff with them was art. It was all art based. It was all learning how to paint and glaze and draw from life and use models and just elevate my art to a different. I saw an interview with Brian K. Vaughan the other day, and he had this great. He said that everybody who gets into comics, climbs a certain ladder, and then that ladder burns up behind them. Like nobody gets into comics the same way as the other person. So, and so they kind of showed me so they got in through from college and all that stuff. Like I think Kent started doing blood right out of Pratt University or the Pratt School. And George got in some other way. And so they would introduce me to people, but inevitably it's kind of the luck of the draw in your own way to kind of to really kind of get in.
So they introduced me to comics really a focus though? I mean, early on when you were doing more of the fine art and the painting, was comics always kind of in the back of your mind? I mean, was it an early inspiration, and then you kind of switched to painting as more of on the fine art side of things, and then kind of comics came back into your life afterwards, or
sort of that. My first absolute love was comics. I fell for them, and so even my paintings were narrative in nature. I still like that aspect of storytelling. I never dropped out. I would always do a short story or something. If I hadn't done comics really that much that year, I would try to find a couple of small projects. So it was always something I kind of kept burning, even when I really dove into the painting. But inevitably, somewhere around about 7 years ago, I was kind of having this dual crisis, and I was like, well, I've given 50% of my time to comics and 50% to painting. Like, why aren't I getting more than 50% of the rewards? And so like in both fields, I just wasn't where I wanted to be. And inevitably I was like, for something like this, I feel like I need to pick something 100% for a while and just see what happens when I fully invest. And I think I've worked more in the last 7 years, and I've done different higher end projects in the last 7, like really just going for it and finding that love of comics again, than I've done probably my last 20.
So, as a fine artist, before you got back into comics, I mean, how successful were the gallery shows, those sorts of things? I mean, that was like I mentioned to you before, I went to art school, but I ended up going, and because I wanted to be an illustrator, but the art school I went to was more fine arts. And yeah, unfortunately, they just kind of pushed me so far into the fine art side that I forgot about illustration and my love of comics until I started collecting art again. But it seemed like that. So it's really fascinating to me that you kind of focused on fine arts and still that you came back to comics after the fact. I think that's pretty amazing. And maybe not going to a formal school might have even been to your advantage to just kind of be working with those other creators as well who in their own right. I mean, are doing fine art in comics, right? I mean, Pratt's absolutely amazing, and his approach to storytelling and the way he does his panel layout, it's not traditional at all. And the way he works on does his pages, kind of his panels are all separate pieces in many ways, and some of the stuff he does. I mean, I really like the way those guys approach the comics hobby when they're doing things. And so I don't know, in a weird way, I think not going to school was probably really good for you, just because you got to be working with those other guys. But so like you're saying, but tell me about the gallery shows. I mean, that's what I'm kind of curious about that before we talk about comics, at least that aspect of your career. I've never got to experience that myself.
I don't know. It's I mean, I did well. I mean, in the show, I made a living off of doing gallery shows and exhibitions, and it's a different kind of. I guess it's kind of like any creative thing. Like you feel you have to, you kind of have to network and be out there and schmooze and stuff like that. And it's a different kind of schmoozing. I enjoyed it. I was in it. I really, really, really love it. But at some point, I don't know. I found myself like with a couple of gallery owners, like chasing after a couple of buyers, and really, I don't know. It just it didn't feel like I was making art anymore. I was just trying to make some sales, and inevitably, I found that I just do my best painting. As cliche as it sounds, I do my best painting when it's for me, and when I really started painting. And it wasn't that I was painting as a business, but I started painting. Sometimes, when you start making money, you don't want to lose that money. So I started painting things that I thought the audience might also enjoy.
Sure.
Which you should never do, because you never know what the fucking audience wants to see.
Right.
And really, the only thing the audience wants to see is something as honest and pure as possible that you're not considering them. You're just putting something personal out. So you find this is, so I just found that this kind of war I was going to have with myself was better put on the side and not professionally. So now I paint purely, for me. And then when there's enough work, I'll approach a gallery. But
it's on your own terms then at that point. That sounds like the best way to do it, right? I mean, because when you're making those paintings now, you're really only doing it when you want to. So it is more personal work. I mean, and which artist does it? I mean, when you're doing work for hire, that's just totally different than when you're doing work for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, work for hire to me is a challenge. I'm like, here's a thing, and I'm going to try to make it badass and blah. And painting is, I feel a thing, and I've got to get this out, and I'm going to blah. Like it's just much more personal and therapeutic, and the other is just fun, and that's the work I've chosen.
Yeah, I don't blame it. But so when you decided you wanted to get back into comics, I mean, what was the first, what did you kind of approach first? Were you looking for a right story? Were you thinking of doing your own stories? What was, or did you just want to like get your feet wet again by doing comics, and you were just kind of taking projects that you thought were appropriate for your style, and this were the kind of stories that you wanted to tell?
I had been painting and making art on my own terms for a while. And so it only felt right to kind of try to approach a comic that way. So I brought back a series that I had started a long time ago called Empty Zone, which was a horror cyberpunk story. And I wrote and drew that for Image. And I did that for 2 arcs, so 10 issues. And then I realized that I had been out of comics, I'd been out of comics for a little too long, and I had no idea what to do. I had no idea about self-promotion, I felt like a babe in the woods again. I was like, oh no, I lived in this painting world, and I assumed if I made a comic, everyone would just show up. And I'm like, no, you have to tell people. I knew nothing, and I kind of got slammed, this way and that with sales here and there, but it was a great experience. And I just knew I was like, I'm going to come back to this when I know more again. And so then I kind of jumped ship and did this 4-issue thing with Josh Williamson for Vertigo called Frostbite. And that is the thing that started like paying bills. And I really enjoyed the script, and I was like, oh, comics, like, oh, this is fun again. And directly after that is when Todd hit me up to do Spawn. And then it just felt kind of like kismet, because he was my first, idol. And so then here he is emailing me, asking me to draw his character. I'm like, so from that point forward, I was like, I'm going to draw comics.
Yeah, and I do have some of your artworks as well. So maybe when you mention the title or something, I'll show a few pieces. But
Sure.
But yeah, this thing's just beautiful. I love the negative space in this one, the way you approach that. I mean, this is just an awesome composition.
Thank you. I love contrasty covers. I love them so much. I either like to fill the backgrounds with black or white. I like simple, iconic, not simple, but like more iconic kind of imagery. And that spawned, like, Todd, I was so happy because Todd really let me be me, and like the abstraction and all the textures and stuff that I put in this painting I hadn't really seen in Spawn art before. And he really let me, he gave me a lot of freedom.
So when you say he approached you, what was that like, having Todd want you to kind of work on his baby?
I thought I was being conned. I thought I was being pranked. I got an email from Todd McFarlane asking me to draw Spawn, and it was a very short email. And I'm like, so I emailed him back, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll draw Spawn. And he wrote back, and he's like, that's great. Like, let's get on the phone. And I'm like, what? Like, how?
You didn't think you were going to get a reply, right?
Because I'm not going to say, but like, you look at his email, I'm like, that's not the email of Todd McFarlane.
Right.
And so then there was something about it that said still write it out. So I sent my phone number. I'm like, anybody can get my phone number anyway, probably. And so and then I was parking outside a comic book shop, and I got a call, and it was from Arizona, and I was like, I know he's in Arizona. There's no way that this is Todd McFarlane. And I didn't answer it. I let it go straight to voicemail. Because all of a sudden I was like 15 again. I'm like, there's no way this is Todd McFarlane. And I listened to the voicemail, and I swear he doesn't do anything to like really kind of like help you with this, because he started the voicemail like we had known each other for years. And he was like, hey, I'm looking for Jason Stud Alexander. I want him to teach me to draw better. I'm like, who's messing with me?
Yeah, you are being pranked. Exactly.
This is nuts. But he kept going on and on about it. I'm like, dial back. And next, I'm on the phone with him for about an hour. I'm just like, holy. And so it was through Empty Zone. He found when he wanted to he wanted Spawn to start taking more of a horror film quality. That's where he was going to take the film and all this other stuff. And so he wanted kind of a different look for it. And so of course he's going to go through, home first. And so he found me by looking at image artists and stuff like that.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But still, how surreal, I mean,
it's insane.
Tapped by him to be someone to kind of like, it's not like you say, it's not rebranding or anything, but it's just to give it a different tone.
Yeah.
Kind of give it a different direction than a straight comics feel. And you certainly did that. I mean, let me show a couple other pieces here as well. I mean, just gosh, it's just, again, look at that negative. Again, it's the composition, the negative space. It's such a beautiful thing, man.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my first homage to his first cover. It's just kind of hard to tell sometimes. But yeah, and like especially for the first cover, my first go at it, like all I wanted to do was show off what I was doing in my fine art with the multiple faces and the horror kind of thing. So yeah, that's hanging in the office. That's still one of my favorite pieces.
Well, I can see why. What size is this painted on? Yeah. Do I?
It's also the reason Todd makes fun of me.
Uh-oh.
This one was okay. It was the first cover, a deadline hit, and I had no other canvases available. So that one happens to be, I believe, 50 by 70.
He was probably complaining about the cost to shoot that one, right? I mean, that's not something you can just drop on a flatbed and scan. You've got to bring somebody in and properly photograph it or whatnot. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So it was a pain in the ass, is what it was.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple other artists who always say, you know, I didn't really realize what size I should be working on when I got started, and you know, you kind of learn after those first few times out there when you realize, wow, I shouldn't be working in this scale because the cost to shoot or whatnot is just it's just not what you're expecting. The publishers don't want to see that, you know, and but what would you know? How would you know, right? I mean, but you said you still got it, so that's pretty amazing. You didn't. I was going to ask you. That was, of course, one of the questions I wanted to know was like, do you hold on to a lot of pieces that have meaning to you? So you know, versus selling them. I mean, how do you approach something like that? I mean, especially getting to work with Todd. I would think that any work that you did with Spawn must have been really special, just because every time you're putting the brush to paper or canvas, you'd have to what an exhilarating feeling to be doing that. And then so again, how do art sales kind of factor into the work that you're doing? And when you're done with the project, you just feel like you're ready to let it go sometimes?
I keep very few pieces. It all, when it comes to comics, I mean, and those are the ones where I'm genuinely something happened in the work that kind of elevated it a little bit and something like that. And so then I'm like, oh, I'll just keep this page aside or this cover, that kind of a thing. But that number is pretty small. For the most part, I like making the comics, and so I'm like, I'm ready for the next one. And so, but let me just show you here's another Spawn cover.
We're going full screen for this. Oh yeah, I've got that image too, man.
There we go. So this is roughly the size that I like to paint, even for covers. I have a large flatbed scanner. Oh, there's the Spawn pants.
Oh my gosh, look at that. That's amazing. So painting that size, it feels you have the freedom that you want to kind of pretty much tackle the imagery the way you feel most comfortable, rather than maybe doing it on something like 16 by 24 or something that you're working at double the size, but that's where you feel most comfortable.
It's where I am with the tools and all of that. I like spatter, I like crunchy stuff, and it's hard to do that. I'm a texture guy, and it's hard to do that on small stuff. That's where guys like Simon Bisley always floored me with, like, all of these painted pages being 11 by 17. Right. None of, like, working that small in painting doesn't make sense to me. It's very difficult. I prefer as much room as I can.
So Johnny McCloskey is asking, like, how much do your covers usually sell for? I mean, where do you do most of your art sales through? I guess that would be a good question, because I didn't even think to look into that before I started talking with you tonight.
I do. I handle most of my art.
Okay. So you're not repped or anything. It goes through your website or social media, however you. Okay.
Yeah, there's a big cartel store.
Sure.
That kind of
Well, that's I should have put that. You know what? I will make sure at the end of the show, Jason, I will put your Big Cartel store link in the show description on Facebook and YouTube, so everybody knows where they can buy. But David Matheny was saying, is Jason a cover painter only? No, not at all. That's we can show some interiors as well. I know that you sent me some interiors from Spawn, I believe.
Interior. Yeah, interiors are my first love. the series I'm working on between Spawn and Killadelphia is where I really started finding a love of doing covers. I've always been such an Eisner fan, and I love the sequential. I love going panel to panel storytelling.
Now, something like this is all brushwork, or I mean, with ink, or is there some mixed media going on in pieces like this?
There's I do the underdrawings with red pencil. That's mostly just because I like how the little pieces stand out in the finished page. And the brush and these parallel calligraphy pens and some quill. Used to be all quill and brush, and then I started getting more into other kinds of pens. And always a lot of whiteout and a lot of toothbrush and spatter. My pages are always fairly heavy and mountainous with the whiteout.
Here, Mike Snitzer says I bought Jason's Spawn 301 and 305 covers and Gunslinger 1's covers. So there are covers out there in the wild.
There are.
But yeah, this is nice. I got a couple other interiors here.
These were getting into the Spawn heading up towards 300 and all that stuff. And yeah, I of all the times to have gotten, picked for Spawn at the time, like heading right to 300 was just like, it just made me push every issue trying to get better and better and top myself, before we hit like the big mark.
Well, so at least you had some kind of like prep work before going after 300. But yeah, this is I love this image. Just love the crazy perspective on it. It doesn't it's like it feels like it shouldn't work, but it works really well. And I love the extra 2 panels to the right. It just as a composition, it's so fun. It really is. I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
Even though the subject matter is a little scary.
I loved it. So anytime this kind of a thing gets explained, like, oh, it's a laboratory or whatever, like my first thing is to go into like, how can I start bending and warping the angle? I'm such a fan of that kind of like forced perspective and all that kind of jazz. And then definitely like the people in the cases and stuff like that, some Brothers Quay influence.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these spreads, I believe, were like I was fully just diving back into some of McKeon's stuff from Arkham Asylum. I love those 2-page spreads with the skinny vertical panels.
Yeah, I was going to ask because I remember getting those 2 images. I thought, well, that's interesting that the art examples that were sent were the DPSs, and I was curious. If it was because of you really thought those pages were very exemplary of the work that you were most happiest with, or what the reasoning was behind that.
Mostly I try to, if I'm going to do an interview, I try to just find things I feel like have like a wow factor.
So that's true. No, but yeah, well, but they're larger. That's kind of what I was thinking though, is it goes back to you're with the paintings and everything being on a larger board. 11 by 17 is too small, but if you can do 22 by 17, it starts to feel a little bit more comfortable for you too, right? I mean, as a work area,
right?
A little bit more freedom.
And those are not 17. My standard comic page is 22.
22. All right. Dang.
I'm 14 and a half by 22. So those 2-page spreads are almost 30 by 22.
Well, you better have a large scanner there at the office.
We do.
Studio, man. That's funny though. So I can only imagine when you did those larger paintings. I mean, did Todd know going in that you were making them at the size that you were, that 50 by 60 or 70 or something? Did he know that when you started working on those, or did you just show it to him when you did the finished product?
I showed it to him on the finish, but then I showed him a photo of me standing beside it. And then from that point forward, and then when he saw my pages for the first time, he was just like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I was like, I'm a painter. But even that, like the work has kind of transitioned now that I really wanted to make more and more comics. For the last couple of years, I've switched mostly to digital. And so I like, now it comes down to like the right project, like it's not 100%, but whenever there's the next right book, like it'll either be paper or digital, but just kind of depends on what it feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw from your Facebook feed that you're doing a lot of work digitally now, or is it more like based on what the job you feel it requires? I mean, you're not strictly digital anymore, or I'm assuming, because of your background. I can't imagine that switching to digital and whole 100% is really the direction you'd want to go. But I don't want to put words in your mouth either. So tell me.
I believe there's a balance in all things, and so right now there's a lot of my work that's digital, most of it, and that's purely because it's someone just showed me a new tool to draw comics. Mm-hmm. I've drawn comics the same way for 20 something years on paper, erasing and redrawing, and so now it's just, for me, the digital thing is just a new tool that I can there's a new way I can make comics. And then when I kind of get really comfortable with it, everything ebbs and flows. I'll come back and paint and paper and kind of mix the two. But right now, I just want to have whatever's going to be the most fun and get the work done. That's what I'm going to do it on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I mean, time is precious these days, and if you can get it done quicker, have more time with the family. Like you said, you've got some young ones and whatnot. I mean, you don't want to be sitting in the studio all day, right?
Right. But then, you just pick like special pages and covers, to work on those traditionally, to still have one. I just still like making art that you can touch,
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I mean, the secondary market for selling is also nice, but like for me, there's just something about being able to for me personally, to fight the medium. Like, like I said, I use a lot of texture. So sometimes I'm grinding into paper or whatever. And I'm like, I'm kind of at war with it a little bit. But it's cool because it makes me present, and I'm fully engaged.
Right.
The ease of digital can sometimes, you can get a little lazy.
Right. But I saw some of your digital work too, and it did have a very painterly feel to it that reminds me, it looks like you right at the end of the day. And I think that translates people's style transferring from a traditional to digital medium. Sometimes they don't feel the same, but when I was looking at your work, I didn't really feel that the end product was dramatically different than your traditional work. It seemed like you're really putting a lot of effort into it to make it feel like you. And I mean, I assume you wouldn't be doing it if you couldn't actually kind of emulate the style that you're trying to go after. If again, like you said, it's a new tool, you're experimenting with it, but to me, it's you're pulling it off pretty well.
Thank you. It was nice to see when I started working that apparently I draw a certain way no matter what I'm drawing with. So like someone's like, how many layers do you use? I'm like, oh no, I'm just been putting spatter over line art like it was original, like it was traditional. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about putting different layers and making this easier on my life. I was basically working traditionally, digitally.
So, right. No, I can tell. I've used Photoshop and those kinds of programs for a long time. So I was watching you do that. The one character. I can't remember which. I didn't take any notes. I should have taken some notes. But the thing is, when you were painting their face, I could see how you're working in the layers. Because I've tried doing some digital work. My kids are, I don't think. They draw traditional and digital probably 50% each, and I've tried using those tools. I can't use them at all. They don't. It just doesn't feel natural. But so I'm always amazed and impressed by artists that can make that transition and still have it, look really well. Because I think that it's a feat. It's not accomplished by many people.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I like that kind of the popular Cintiq and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I got onto Spawn, I asked, I just went for it. I was like, oh great, that's awesome, Todd. Can I write it? And he's like, what? And so I had my co-writer partner, and he and I started writing it, the run of Spawn, and then Todd took over. But he was like, well, sure. And I was like, can I color it? And he's like, well, fine, if you want to do it all. And when we got off the phone, I'm like, I have to go learn how to do color. And because I hadn't done it. And so I bought a Cintiq and I taught myself and colored like 3 issues. And I put it down and it collected dust for about a year. If it hadn't have been for the pencil, for the iPad Pro, I don't think I would be a digital guy. Mm-hmm. If there hadn't been that thing that felt so much, you know, it's the closest, it's the most intuitive thing I've drawn with. But yeah, if I was left to that big stylist with the wig, I wouldn't have. I don't think.
No, I don't blame you. Like I said, that's the same kind of stuff that I've experimented with when I was buying them for my kids, and I just couldn't get it. I'd sit there and watch them work on it, and I'm like, how the hell are you drawing? You know, I can't do that. And they're drawing here and looking at the screen up there, and I'm like, I can't do that. It's the same thing as using a mouse, but I mean, trying to put a digital pen in my hand and work with it, just never worked. But you know, so what you're saying though is that in many cases, or in some cases, you still do traditional work when you're like the cover piece, because you want to, you know, it's nice to have that additional revenue from an art sale after the fact. But and I think that's pretty common with a lot of artists that have made the transition over to digital, that they'll like to do their covers still traditionally, you know, maybe a few of the interiors, title pages or something like that, but by and large the majority of it is digital now. But just to still have those aftermarket sales, I mean, so you must be pretty comfortable not to worry about needing that, because so many creators today really rely on those sales after the book is published and whatnot, just to kind of make up for bad page rates and whatever else, you know, just needing the extra money. But so you got to be in a good spot creatively, and, you know, in life, to just make that switch and not worry about it.
I realized, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, oh, you're getting older. You can't just rely on doing your pages and selling those. You know, what happens when you get too old? You stop making the pages. Mm-hmm. So it's just different kinds of projects I started taking on. And I just wanted, instead, I just started making more projects, you know, and, you know, I want, you know, depending on what the project is, whether it's IPs or royalties or whatever, it's just the choice of starting to work a little smarter with contracts that have residuals and stuff like that. Sure. Cause I don't, so I would like, I limit myself to maybe 3 conventions a year, just because it's worth more to me to finish an album cover or a movie poster or something like that. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't blame you. What are your regular shows that you go to? I mean, or do you just kind of pick and choose different ones every year, or are there consistent ones that you hit, or that you attend and exhibit at?
New York is a consistent. I'm going to do Rose City this year, but I normally do Emerald City, but the dates were all crazy, and so I was this will be my first year on Rose City, but New York is kind of a standard, and Boston was kind of a standard for a while. Mm-hmm. And then this year I'll do a lot of LA shows. And you know, I missed the Anaheim one, but like I think October there's an LA show and stuff like that. I'm still just barely dipping my toe back in, because there's still pandemics and
right. Well, yeah, and I should, yeah, that we could have led with that. You know, what were the last couple of years like? We're all, you know, with the pandemic. I mean, I went to my first con last weekend. I went to MegaCon, and I hadn't been I went to Cleveland just for an hour or two, because I wanted to meet the guy who was running MegaCon, because they had me do a panel. But to actually go to a show and walk a hall, that was the first time in over 2 years. It felt odd, you know. I mean, I had my hand sanitizer with me. I kept, you know, every hand I shook, or if I touched a portfolio or something, I put a little hand sanitizer on every, you know, many times during the day, because it's still something that concerns me. So how about you? I mean, what were when you didn't have the shows and whatnot, and certainly you're probably not traveling for work since you're working from home, but how did you handle the 2 years during the pandemic as a creator?
that's a night in and of itself right there.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, but it's a big question. But I mean, you've still been doing a lot of work. So in a weird way,
Yeah.
I mean, did you feel like, was there a point where you kind of weren't doing any comics for a month or two, or did you, or how did it go?
No, I was always working on something. My partner, Rodney Barnes, who writes Killadelphia and Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog, like he also works in Hollywood. He wrote a show called Winning Time that's on HBO right now.
Yeah.
And he explained to me when I was like, dude, comics just stopped. And he was like, no, things quit getting made, but things are still building, like, and are getting ready for when things open up again and all that. So so he kind of opened up the window and kind of taught me to how to use the time to thrive versus, like, you know, just complain and huddle down and wait for it to be over. So I was very proactive during that time. So I was working a lot, but it was just always a balance. We had just had a baby in 2019, December of 2019.
Oh my goodness.
So, you know, this little 4-month-old, 5-month-old baby during, and then we had to move at the beginning of pandemic with the baby. So it was a huge uphill thing, but my wife's a creative, I'm a creative, and we figured it out. And, you know, if not for her, well, like I wouldn't have made it.
Well, that's that had to be
just
really
walked
tough.
into the ocean.
Yeah, you got a new kid in a pandemic, so no, you don't want to go out anywhere at all. I mean, and but that's good that you at least had, you know, a little bit of support behind it, not just from your wife, but from other creatives to kind of say, you know what, we can keep working. There's still things that we're doing while this is going on. I mean, when many comic artists had to, you know, put pencils down or whatever it was for a couple months, I mean, you were still keeping yourself busy on creative projects, and you know, so it didn't affect you. Well, other than the move probably being a little chaotic, I'm sure you didn't really have any downtime.
No, I was constantly working, and so that was good. Building up, and then a lot of these projects are like coming to fruition now, so it's kind of cool.
Mel wanted to know what's the inspiration for Killadelphia?
Killadelphia, story-wise, you're gonna have to ask Rodney. There's a whole lot of things. He's got a whole lot of layers when it involves Killadelphia. Visually, I was coming off of Spawn, and where I was after Spawn was, or at the end of Spawn was, Todd kind of switched gears and was really back in love with the Capullo style and wanting to build stuff. And so I was exaggerating and being all kind of superhero-y a little bit for whatever I do. But then when Killadelphia came up with Rodney, I really wanted to show, and his scripts were just so incredible. I really wanted to show, I wanted people to believe it. I wanted to make vampires in comics as scary as I possibly could. That's pretty much been my goal. It's just been pure horror. I've just wanted to make the scariest stuff I can draw in this realm. And I feel like especially with his scripts, like there's an issue where this girl who's just staring at you in the center of all of this madness. There's an issue where there's a splash page where she has a younger blonde girl in her mouth like a terrier. Like, like the imagery in this thing is fantastic. I've drawn so many, you know, now that we have werewolves, now I've drawn so many vampires being eviscerated and all. Like I'm having a little bit more, like having more fun with it. Like we started the series and I really wanted to prove something, and I really wanted to show some realistic horror and make it really scary. And now coming up on, I'm about to start issue 24, and now there's a little bit more exaggeration and fun injected in it. Like instead of just showing, I used to just want to just show like savagery, and now I'm kind of having a little bit more like Bisley fun. I mean, I want to show the guts. I want to show all the innards flying around and kind of have some comic book fun with it. And we do these noir editions now, which are black and white versions. So you can get black and white and color.
Yeah, that's really nice. Well, so it's fun. So I wanted to ask you about that too. I mean, so most of I don't want to say most of your work, it has kind of that gritty, grisly horror kind of feel to it. I mean, is that just a part of your nature, Jason, or is it, does it, how does that come out in your artwork? Because clearly from that fine art background to begin with, from the works of yours that I've seen, they all kind of have a very dark and moody feel to them, and I'm sure that that's part of what maybe when some publishers look at your body of work, they say you end up getting kind of pushed into these more horror genre related books, and I mean, I assume you're excited by that, right? I mean, that's kind of where you feel you're at your best creative level is in those types of stories.
Absolutely. Since I was a kid, my mom was a Stephen King fan and let us watch horror movies at a way too young age. And I was obsessed with the gore part. Like once, I saw the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I knew I was sold. Like, and that's what I wanted to do. Like when I was a kid, my first, I guess, career path from late junior high through high school was I felt like I was preparing to be a special effects artist. I was going to conventions, meeting Tom Savini and talking about Dick Smith and making my mat, all of this stuff. And then man, when I was 17, I saw McFarlane do that stupid Spider-Man cover. And I was like, oh my God. And I was just like, I'm going to draw comics. But I still so the horror stuff is so visual to me that so this is kind of, it feels like in a lot of these scenes, I'm getting to do special effects, doing all the gore that I would want to do in real movies.
That's awesome. I mean, I can see it, and I never and thinking about it like that. That's true. If you were a fan of doing makeup and effects and thought that would be someplace that you were going to move, a direction you were going to go, this is just as good, if not better, because you're getting to make things up all the time. You're getting to do your effects on a piece of artwork rather than on a character for a film or something. It's almost better. You're the visual director of every horror aspect of this story. So that's cool. I never really even thought of it like that, but that's awesome.
It's nice because it's I get around what special effects people have to deal with. This is budgetless. I can make these as big as I want, these scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a scene like that. I mean, all the you got to have the pyrotechnics team coming in and right. all the extras. I mean, that scene right there, if you had to film it, it's probably going to cost you just $50,000 just to turn the cameras on and bring the crew in. So it doesn't cost anything at all to put it on paper.
Oh, it's the beauty of comics, man. It's just budgetless storytelling.
Man, well, and that's what we, again, it's all about sequential storytelling. That's why we love comics to begin with, and for those of us who collect original comic art as well, it's all about we like the story. We like to see the creator's approach to tackling a difficult panel to panel scene. I mean, that's why we love the medium. And look at this. You do a fantastic job breaking things up. I love the silhouette of the figure here with with the word balloons or off to the side. I mean, it's just a lovely composition. But that's what's fun about the medium is that we're being told stories in a narrative way, but also a visual way. There's nothing like comics. Like you said, when you saw Todd doing Spider-Man, you knew that comics were written, and it wasn't just his art. I mean, it was the stories were great too, but it was the way he was telling them through his artwork that made him super special. So this is that's why we love comics. There's something really special about the way that we interact with reading and seeing the pictures, the way that it comes into us. It's and it's why I went back to comics. Cinema on paper. It really is. Like I would bore people at conventions talking about young people when I talk about how to break in. I would go about panel space in between the gutters and all how to work on timing and all,
because that's the stuff. Like if you can get a reader just full there, yeah, some guts. You get a reader just like fully invested, you know. Like to me, the acting, like with Sangster's face in that bottom right corner, like face acting to me is one of the, you know, well, I mean, Eisner and McFarlane and all those guys, like all of these faces were just so beautiful and emotive. That's one of the, yeah, it's one of the things I always want to try to keep.
Yeah, we had Howard Chaykin on one of the panels over the weekend, and he was just fascinating to listen to about his approach to visual storytelling on a page, right? Because I'd had him on a show 3 or 4 months earlier, and I was trying to find examples on Comic Art Fans of his work. And I was like, damn, this guy is like good. I can't find a bad panel page by him. And it was funny, you know, I had him on, you know, and you know, he's 70 years old. He's been in the industry forever. And I made that comment to him, like, I can't find a bad page that you ever did. And he, you know, he was like, he just, I can't even remember what he said, but I felt like an idiot. He's like, well, you know, he goes, I know how, you know, I followed Eisner. I know how to tell a story. What do you think? But you know, you can look at a lot of creators' page work and you'll always find a bad page here or there. But I was literally like going through them and I'm like, damn, this guy knows how to tell a story, you know, and all about changing camera angles and perspectives and you know, and he literally has, like, you know, he's got it down to a science. But you don't think about those as a reader, someone who's just picking up a comic book to read. You don't think that there's that much involved in storytelling, but man, you know, there is, and you know, and I feel like a dummy. You know, I've been reading comics for the last 45 years and collecting art for just over 20, and I feel like I'm just beginning to get it. You know, but I mean, clearly I got it. I knew they were great, right, but I didn't understand like the science behind everything. You know, that the artist and the writer, you know, that they're bringing to the medium that really makes it so special to you.
Absolutely, 100%. Oh, hello. Office, they're changing trash. All good.
You are really in an office space.
I'm really, yeah. This is like an office building that you would not expect. You know, there's it's actually more like medical and rehab stuff everywhere, and then you open the door and it's a comic book studio.
Hey, if you don't have the space at home, you got to find someplace to work.
Yeah, man. I think Eisner worked in an office park. I think that was his last office, was just in a regular old office park like this. I'm like, it's a space.
Yeah, here like this. You know, I don't know why what I was looking at recently, but it's funny. We were looking at some McFarlane art. I feel like in the last 2 weeks, and I remember just looking at several panels of his work that were these tall, structured pages, like just like this one. You know, where you're just really. I mean, that's you're challenging the reader and you're challenging yourself on a page like this, because you're not making it easy on yourself in a layout like this.
No. But if you're reading it, your eye travels down very well, I think. Like, and you kind of get to see, you know, the intensity of each little thing as your eye travels. That's always, as long as like while you're reading it, if it still works, that's, yeah. But there's not often too many pages like that.
No. Somebody's mentioning it was Collector Scott Wingo's page. Probably. I just don't remember the page, but I remember looking at a McFarlane recently, just like that. But again, it's just challenging. I thought, and I think that I mean, do you approach a page like that wanting to challenge yourself, or do you kind of go into it knowing already as you're coming to this part of the story that you already had it kind of planned that this was the approach you wanted to take to this page?
No, it's all just scripted in the moment. Like this, like when I'll read the script for the one time through, just to kind of be a fan and get a chance to read the story and get suspense, and I'm like, oh, that was great. And on the second time through, it's, you know, I'll read the page and be like, okay, this 3-page sequence is going to be done like this. And then, so I kind of give up. Each scene kind of has its own vibe or its own approach. And so I don't know, like immediately, I don't have like style that kind of just goes one way all the way through. There's moments when like there's utter chaos. I know I'm gonna like drop panel borders and stuff like that and make it more chaotic. But I don't tend to have like a template. I really try to let each page tell me what's going to be like the most effective way to tell the story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go, Scott. Scott's a big McFarlane fan. He said Torment series is almost all tall, dark, vertical panels. Spider-Man 1 through 5. Yep, that's probably what I'm thinking of.
That Torment series is just, it's like I still have that the trade of it over there. Like that thing, it blew me away. And like as a story, as a whole, there are flaws in his writing, but there are moments when, with him and Mary Jane, or with like, I just remember just being blown away at the end when Spider-Man's all torn and busted up and he falls down into like the bathroom of their apartment and there's a small panel. It's just, Todd knew exactly that gesture to show like utter exhaustion. And that's that Torment stuff, man. It's a good influence.
Exactly. Well, like you said, when you saw Todd's work, that was what convinced you wanted to work in comics, right?
Oh man, I had never seen something so dynamic. Like everything just seemed to jump off the page, and I was like, "Well, I want to do that."
But yeah, this is. I looked through this earlier. I just, and again, it's not a story that I've read, but just like Mikhail just said in the chat, I haven't read Killadelphia yet, but quickly rectify that, and I am in complete agreement with Mikhail on that one as well. Because just looking at these the pages here, I think it's just fantastic. And I like I told you, I'm a horror guy at heart. I named my son Ash after Ash from the Evil Dead, right? He still hasn't seen the movie. His mom wouldn't let him watch it for the longest time. But that's where my roots are. That's where I've got a Cthulhu shirt on tonight. I'm Mickey Mouse Cthulhu. But yeah, no, I love good horror stories, and this is fantastic. And Mike just mentioned people forget Killadelphia was nominated for an Eisner last year, and you've been nominated for a few, right?
Oh, I have, yeah. That was last year was my third nomination.
Nothing wrong with that.
One day. And yeah, Killadelphia, like that's where you find like the joy of Rodney's writing as well, because there's so much historical fiction brought up from like founding fathers and stuff like that with vampires and werewolves. Like it goes all over, but it all makes sense when you're in it.
Yeah, see, I look at this page. It's got everything you'd want. I mean, the way the panels, the perspectives change. You're in close. You're pulled back. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful page layout and storytelling in this. I mean, it's it's not the top panels, the perspectives tilted a little bit, angles are changed. I mean, man, it's just fantastic, and I'm just impressed. I mean, that's why I want to read. I got to read them.
Oh, thank you. I'm such a fan of that Dutch angle thing. Like I love, like, I went from, The Crow and Will Eisner to all the EC stuff. And so I just, I feel like all comics should kind of be black and white.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, I love twisting those angles and playing with the storytelling. But yeah, man, it's cinematic. It's just, you see the scene in your head and you're like, cool, I'm just going to capture this. And then it's comics. I love them.
As do we all. So tell me a bit about Frostbite.
Frostbite, great kind of Mad Max in the snow with a horrible disease and a cute girl as the lead. And I use photo reference and models to base my artwork off of. And for my book Empty Zone, I had my wife posing as this bartender character, and there was a scene at the end of it with the bartender character in which I'm explaining to my wife how to pose, and I take the thing and like, oh, and here's, you get shot through the thing and your guts fly out the front, and she's just like, oh, I die, and I'm like, oh, so I needed to rectify killing my wife in my comic fairly quickly. And so luckily Frostbite came along and I'm like, you're the lead. And so I got to put my wife as the lead in Frostbite. So that is not my wife. That is actually my niece. If you are in my house, I will probably make you pose for something. That's pretty much the rule. Yeah, there's characters like this. Like Frostbite is a cool world. It was 4 issues of just really fun comic book making. You know, like an ongoing chase almost throughout the entire thing. And then you get to see characters like this.
So photo, you know, I think it's what was it? Paulo Rivera used to have like this wacky reference thing where he does his own photo. He always showing examples of what, because he uses photo reference a lot in his painting. And I just think that, you know, I just always have enjoyed that. And I'm always kind of curious how many, you know, artists actually use photo reference and do just what you're saying. You know, you ask a family member, you got to pose like this, you know, and I think it's just a fun part of the medium now, especially with, you know, now that you have digital photography, it's easy just to kind of take a photograph on your phone, bring it up, and then use that as your reference. So I think that's cool. And I bet people in the family enjoy ending up in the comics one way or another.
They do. It's cool. It's become a thing. So like extended family and all that. If we travel to Boston, or if I go home, like everybody's been in something. My niece and nephew and my dad was in Dead Irons, the thing I did with Nick Perucci. But yeah, I always friends for the most part, and then I extend it out if I have to. but yeah, everybody kind of gets a kick about showing up in a comic.
Heck yeah. I got to be on a cover of a comic thanks to Nick Perucci.
Nice.
Yeah. And again, I remember we were talking about being able to realize all the dreams of that you might have growing up and everything. Well, now I even was able to check that box off as well. I've been on the cover of a comic book now, so my life is complete.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, and I'm not. I don't recall, but you know, Rick said, did Jason write Frostbite? And
Josh Williamson.
I was gonna say I thought it was okay. So Josh went. All right.
Yeah, great. That was another really great, fun story. But yeah,
was he thinking of you as, you know, as the artist for that going into it, or how did that come about?
No, I think that was at a time I had just gone into the DC offices to hang out with Shelley Bond for a little bit. And in that day, she brought over a few editors, and Jamie Rich was one of them. And she was like, "Do you guys have anything?" And he was like, "Oh." And so Jamie Rich put it together. He's like, "Oh, I think Jason would be perfect for this." And Josh liked the artwork, and yeah, we really just kind of took off with it. Not a lot of back and forth. We really just had Jason actually added some color. I did. Again, with the horror stuff in Frostbite, there's one character that is horribly burned and does some really gross things in a sauna. And on those pages, I went in with those are more mixed media pages. The rest of the pages are color or are digital, and then he's more painted with spatter and grossness. Anytime there's something that really has to be like gross, I tend to try to just, you know, get ahead of it and do it myself, mostly just because I want to.
Let's see. Here was where was that question? It's already further up the screen here. This is more on the traditional side of things. Mike wanted to know if you could speak to the topic of feel of a pencil drawing, maintaining the feel of a pencil drawing during the inking stage. In other words, keeping the vibrancy of the underdrawing without succumbing to the stiffness of ink. You mentioned using a different color kind of pencil in some of your traditional work. So maybe you can talk to that.
Well, for the most part, my pencils suck. Is probably the best word. They are they're more plain drawings. You know,
you're blocking things out with the pencil. Really
they're very rough, and for that exact reason, when I ink my stuff, if I penciled it tight, it's gonna be stiff. It'll be a nice piece, but really it gets a little flat. And so I learned. So for a long time, and still mostly, I don't really use a pencil when I go out sketching or drawing. I always use a pen. And so I'm always trying to make sure that like my line has consequence. I'm not just like whittling around, sketching around, and refining. I just make that line and make it stand. And so mostly it's very loose pencils, which means that most of the drawing is being done in the ink. And if you do it that way, I don't think you stiffen up. You're still a part of the process. You're not just.
Well, the ink part for you is going to be more fun anyway, right? I mean, being a traditional painter and everything, I could see where you wouldn't want to put too much details down in the pencil. You'd want to just get into it. It's all in the ink.
Yeah, so. The pencils just point me in the right direction. The rest of it, I just what's the point in drawing it twice?
That's true. Very, very well, especially when you're doing it all, right? If you're doing the inking, you don't need to be, you can be as loose as you need to be.
Yeah, having an inker would probably scare me, like because my pencils are so bad. I legit almost lost a gig doing ABE SAPIEN with Mike Mignola because my pencils are so bad. Like I started penciling pages, and then I was like, I don't like showing my pencils. I was like, it just gives me an idea. And still, probably about page 5, Scott Alley sent me an email. And he was like, maybe this might not be the right project for you. And I went radio silent for like a week and a half and inked those pages. And then I brought them back, and then they were like, oh. And so from that point forward, I had to save my own ass with my inks. But like, but even Mignola,
you were only showing them the pencil stuff up in
because Mike wanted to see each step, and I'm like, oh no, but they're all very ugly up until the ink. And so there was an email from Scott again that said that that Mignola hated how I work, but liked what happened. But likes the final output. So I'm like, all right, we're good.
So he doesn't like your process, but he's happy with the end result.
He loves the final so like, that's all I ask. You don't need to love how I do a thing.
Oh, hey, you're getting some love from the family, I think.
Oh, Rhea is my daughter. Denora is my wife.
I had a feeling when I saw the hearts a little bit earlier, but I didn't want to ask. But so there you go. You're an awesome dad, man. I don't think that my wife, all the time, I've been doing this for 2 years. I don't think Maureen has ever texted me where she said that my kids thought I was doing an awesome job or that I was loved. We're gonna have to fix that now that I've seen that, because that's never. They just used a Roomba and took me offline the other night. Other than that,
see, you got to show them this playback. It's like, look, come on.
I'm gonna have a talk with them. They're in the other room after we're done here. But so let me see, where else can we go? The thing is, man, I see I'm having so much fun here. This is great. But let's look at there was some other Spawn stuff you sent me. I should have probably showed those when we were talking about that. A little bit more detail. These pages are awesome. Look at that.
Thank you. This was one of the 2 History of Spawn issues, and when I said earlier that I worked on 22 by 14.
Yeah.
And so I was doing all this 2-page spreads, and I got this brilliant idea to why just use 2 pages when they're just going to be split down the middle. I'll just get one 30 by 15 page and do the spread on that, which then makes it a nightmare to try to ship if anybody buys it.
Right. See, there's that too. Yeah. I
did two or 3 spreads this way, and then I abandoned all of that nonsense and just went to the page by page and put them together. But yeah, this page exists as like a full 30 by 22 page.
Yeah, that's.
I should know better, but I don't.
Right, exactly. I didn't even think about that earlier as well. I mean, having to ship that is not cheap, and packing it can't be fun either. Here, let me swing around over to here. Dang.
There we go. What was I thinking?
Yeah. So what do you have, like a big flat file over there? Or I mean, to keep the art? Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that video where you did the full 360. Wow.
Big Spawn. And it was really cool, honestly, to draw Al Simmons. I think at some point I became more excited to draw Al Simmons than I was to draw Spawn, because so I really kind of put in some effort, and I wanted to make Al Simmons kind of look tough and cool.
Sure. And let me see. I have that image as well, the one you just held up. Yeah, that's.
And I got to draw the villains, which was kind of fun.
Dang.
Cygor, come on, that's great.
Oh, this is a different one. Sorry. Oh,
no, that's the vampire story.
Yep, this was the other Spawn image I had.
Yes, yeah, that's the other one that is 30 inches tall.
Man. So you still have a lot of your originals, though. I mean, are these up on the big cartel, or are these ones that you're holding on? Or
I can't recall it. Those should be on the big cartel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anything original that's hanging around the office is probably on the big cartel.
But I don't see, like, you see, do you pack all your and ship all your own stuff, or do you take that home? How do you end up doing that?
Anything bigger, I have an art shipper.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Just take it to them and let them do it.
Yes, I gave up on that a bit ago when it, once I started shipping art for shows and they had to build crates and all that, I'm like, okay, that's how this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So anything large, like a painting or whatever, there's a local art shipper that'll come and grab it.
I don't blame you. I mean, that's I always say I want all the artists that I love to be just making art. I don't want them shipping art.
Right.
So you got it down too. It's like you found a great place to take the art to, and they can take care of that for you.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah, too many. Like once I went with artwork beyond that FedEx box, I was like, all right, somebody else has to handle this because I'm gonna mess. I'm heavy-handed and sloppy, man. So it's better I don't ship anything.
Yeah, let's say he got a question from probably a creative in the audience. From Josh Rodriguez says, when is a good time to take your idea to someone to pitch a project to a publisher or whatnot? I mean, how do you when you come up with something on your own, or maybe when you're working with a writer, how much work do you have done when you're going in to make that pitch on a project?
As much as humanly possible. As much work as you can do before you go into a thing, whether it's multiple pages, whether it's getting a team together, whether it's multiple issues, as much work, because typically people on the other side of the desk or on the other side of email don't have imaginations, or at least ones that work so quickly that you can just describe
unless you've worked with them before. Maybe
right.
They might be able to get your what you're trying to visualize. But
yeah, but if you're new knocking on that door, have some books, man. Just take the guesswork out of it. That's my best advice. Take the guesswork out of it and let them read the thing. Let them see the thing. Asking someone to bet on you, from a guess and from previous stuff. I mean, I've been at it for a number of years, and I'm still gonna pitch books with full issues finished.
Sure. I mean, and that's what you see when people kickstart something, or they're looking to crowdfund something. They pretty much got most of the work done. I mean,
yeah.
If you didn't, those are the ones that you would be skeptical about wanting to back, right? I mean, I want to see that they've got the majority of the work already done, and then I'm willing to put my money into it, because there's enough horror stories out there of people who don't finish projects or take 2 years to finish things. And I'm sure publishers are looking at it even more scrutinous, right? So knowing that you've got a few issues already wrapped up, it has to be, that's got to be a good tipping point. And then if they like what you're doing, then you've got a project and you got a deal.
Yeah, because if you're able to produce, solid, full issues without any help, you can do it even easier with help. So it just sways the odds in your favor so much higher.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned also movie posters and record covers and those sorts of things. What kind of work have you done in those areas?
I did a movie poster for Vandal.
I was going to ask if that was one. I couldn't tell because it's a little small back there, but I figured that was your work.
That is that was my first movie poster. Actually, I just started getting into this work last year, and there was a short film called The Vandal, and the director reached out, and we worked on that poster, and it debuted at Cannes. And then this year, the same director is doing a full feature, and he came back to me, and I storyboarded the full movie and did concept design for the creatures and all that. So it's been the beginning of seeing like what else is kind of out there that I can draw scary shit with. So
what's that like? I mean, working as a concept designer for a film and doing the storyboards. I mean, are you working? Who are you working most closely with? The director, the writer?
Right. Director is the writer. So yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Eddie Alcazar is the director writer, and yeah, it's independent, but so it's basically he and I in a room. He's working out script elements, and I'm boarding it out, and yeah, rough at first because I just had that assumption if I can draw comics and I know storytelling, I can do storyboarding. And you can. It took me a few days longer to kind of learn the language or the accent in a way. So once I figured out, storyboarding, you have to tell it this way, then I really had I had a great time. I enjoy the storyboarding process is literally just the storytelling. Like, so I love that. I love spinning the camera and twisting.
Right, I was gonna say you're messing with camera angles. You're really trying to give them what you think the visual should be for that. I mean, they're giving you some input too, but then you're the one who's really giving them this is the shot. Because at the end of the day, I would think a good storyboard artist is really saving production time by having those scenes laid out, and they don't have to think too much about it, or they might see, we'll change this because we feel it might work better. But the thing is, you're helping them really, get through a project quickly, efficiently, and that's exactly what they want, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, you're in a studio, you're in a comic book, office all day. It's kind of neat to then be on set and see multiple people doing things, running around, and they're doing things based on your boards that are tacked to a wall. Like, and I want to be all too cool for school, but I'm sitting there, I'm just like, this is so cool.
No, that'd be awesome. I mean, that's like, again, you grew up reading Stephen King, seeing horror films, and then you get to actually participate in putting a film together. I mean, giving them the visual cues for everything, and the style by doing the character, some creature designs and that sort of thing too. I mean, okay, that's on my bucket list that I need to check off one day. It's probably never going to happen, but that's like a dream come true for many creatives. I mean, that's so awesome, Jason.
I got to design a monster. I mean, I'm done.
Let's see. Josh asks, do you storyboard with all the dialogue in place or written out, or does the panel layout sometimes influence the dialogue in the process?
I mean, storyboarding is the film thing, so that's I assume you're talking about comic pages, and absolutely, it's best to kind of knock in really vague ideas of where you saw those panels, then go in with the shapes of the balloons and work your compositions around those. I'm a fan of tormenting every letterer that I've worked with. But at some point I was like, I got to ease up a little bit, and it just really, it saves time too, because I was talking to Todd the other day. We were working on a thing together, and he was talking about these pages, like, why, yes, there's all this detail in the background that you could put the word balloon over, but he's like, but that's just wasted time that you drew all that stuff that the word balloon's going over. So, you can just save yourself some time compositionally by including the word balloons in your initial layouts.
So right. So I'm just kind of curious. So I would think I know artists have to accommodate what they expect out of the word balloons and the storytelling that way. So, but you actually go all out of your way to even kind of put them into the art, just to kind of give the letterer a definitive cue where you want things to appear.
Yeah, I I'll knock in, especially digitally now. I'll just knock in on a separate layer and just do the little circles, and that's, you know, Marshall Dillon letters pretty much everything that I do right now, and he doesn't really need much guidance, but you know, he's been doing it for so many years. But if there's a page where I've definitely cut the panel count or I've switched things storytelling wise, I'll go in and show him like, oh, this is where this adjusts, you know. But for the most part, you know, he's already proven himself, you know, so good at placement. But if I worked with somebody new, I would absolutely each page, just until you got a rhythm going.
Right. No, that's a good answer. So there you go, Josh. A little bit of advice as a young creator getting started in the hobby.
Yeah.
So all right. So you've been doing film lately. So what else have did you work on during the pandemic that was exciting? And what kind of stuff are you working on right now that we maybe don't know about that might be coming out soon? You got anything any projects that we'll be seeing something soon from you that we haven't heard about?
One of the projects that really kicked into gear last year is I started. Well, one of the things I was doing is started art directing. My Rodney, my partner, started his own comic label. And those books will start coming out later this year. And that was one of the things during the pandemic. He's like, I'm going to start a comic book company. And so I was like, well, good luck. And so then he pulled me on to be art director. So I've been finding talent for him to work with on his titles. But one of the ones that we're doing together on the side of Killadelphia is we've been doing an original graphic novel for Blackula.
Oh wow!
And the 70s exploitation movie. And
yeah.
And I'm on chapter 4 of 5, and it's a fully painted graphic novel. It's going to be very, very elaborate, very deluxe, beautiful hardcover. But I've been working on that on the side, and that'll be coming out, I believe, this fall. And that, like, other than, you know, Killadelphia hitting issue 24 and all that stuff, the Blackula thing is something I've been really excited about on the artwork and all of that. And yeah, and then at the end of the year, I'm going to start writing again and work up a new Empty Zone series. And I have 2 other titles that I'm developing with my studio partner. So making tons of comics. And then there's like a couple of music videos and other things like that I can't talk about. But there's
you're doing I mean, I guess with a music video, is it storyboarding for something like that, or is it even better? I mean, you can't. You obviously can't tell me, but
this is concept design.
This is all concept stuff. Oh, that's cool. But you'll be able to talk about it once that music video comes out.
Yeah,
good.
I want to now, but now I got to shift gears. Otherwise, I'll just spit it out.
Nah, I hear you. Well, the Blackula might be pretty cool. I mean, I was always a big fan of Gene Colan's work on Dracula. You know, I mean, and painted. You know.
I just got brought to that stuff, and it's been mind blowing. I just picked up the Marvel Essential Black and White 2 days ago. And Gene Colan up until 3 weeks ago didn't exist in my anything, and now I mean I got the artist edition. I've just been deep dive. Yeah, that stuff blows me away. But Killadelphia, I do line art. I do black and white, you know, comics. And so Blackula is so nice because that's all mixed media, experimental color and painty stuff. And so both books will have kind of should have a very different vibe to them.
Oh, very cool. We'll see. Now, Mike asked a question. Are you going to be putting on your Comic-Con this year?
No, that was my 2020 online comic convention that I did for, I think, 4 days straight. I don't know what I was thinking.
It was, I wasn't sure what that was. So you did your own little virtual thing?
Yeah.
4 days. That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And it was really fun, but it was for some reason I got it in my head that like, I'll just be live doing different things from like noon to 5. Like, why wouldn't I want to do that? for 5 hours straight, looking at a camera.
Right.
And doing portfolio reviews and all that. No, the answer to the long thing is no. I would love to do it again, but this year I'm making books. So.
No, hey, nothing wrong with that. I mean, I can see maybe it's something you do when you've got some spare time, and it wouldn't be a 4-day affair. I'm sure, 2, maybe 1, but
yeah, a couple of
4
days
days
is a thing. Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just noon to 5, we did programming this weekend from I had panels running on Saturday from 1 to 7, and then I did a 9 p.m. one, and then on Sunday we had them from noon to 8, and that is just too much. I mean, that's why I took pretty much most of the day off today, because I mean that just wipes you out. You think it's like it should be easy, right? You're just sitting in front of a camera, but it's not.
I'm surprised you're here right now.
I know. I went to see Doctor Strange today too. I was like, I'm really taking the day off by and large, and so finally went to see that because I just didn't have any time. But yeah, no, I get it. But so yeah, all right. So that now we know what Comic-Con is. It was your own. But that was the cool thing about the pandemic, though, was everybody was trying to do something, right? Something different, experimenting, and I think that we're all in a really much more fun and creative space than we were in 2 years ago, because so many people did try different marketing approaches and just other ways to just kind of keep their name out there for people when you couldn't get out to cons or whatnot. I mean, so I think as bad as the pandemic was, I think I wouldn't be doing these interviews if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Right. There was a lot of surprises that came out of it,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful for it, because it really gave me something to focus on, during that time, of doing that. So it did its job. It distracted me, and I had a great time and interviewed friends and all that kind of stuff. And it was good. But now, like, when I think about the idea of getting all that together again for this year, there'll be a time, but not this year.
I don't blame you. So let's see, I'm trying to look through the slides that you sent me here. There were 2 slides I haven't shown then, and then one was this one. It was labeled Tome. So tell me about this.
Tome, I forget the name of the publisher. That's gonna make me sad. Is the name of a book that was printed 11 by 17 and hardcover, and the first volume had the theme of vampires. So different artists doing a few pages regarding vampires. And
this is from Kazra?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And I can't remember the other guy's name, the artist, but I'm good friends with Kazra. So this is actually from Tome, and it was a tome. That was a giant,
it was huge,
16 by 22. It doesn't fit on a bookshelf anywhere.
This is 4 artist editions, man.
Yeah. There we go. I have a copy of that.
Why would you make a book? But it's got a lot of great stuff.
It really did have a lot of great stuff. Tome. All right. Well, I should have known. I should have known. Kazra, he's one of the guys I met early on in collecting original art. I mean, he's a big MODOK fan, and but yeah, he always liked doing his own thing. And I remember when he worked on that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're great.
And let's see, what was the other? Oh, here was the other image that was at the other end of my list here. This American Jesus image. But tell me about this one. I mean, I as a painting, I love it. I mean, that's why I wanted to zoom in on the character's face. I mean, it's just so moody and a little different than the other images of yours that I've seen. They're just color-wise or something about it. I mean, this reminds me more of your figurative work as a fine artist.
Yeah. No, very much, and that was the approach to a lot of it. This was the first cover I did for Mark Millar, and I didn't know what American Jesus was, and I read the volume, and I was like, I was blown away. I thought it was fantastic, and each story, it just kind of implies its own approach, and this there was something so real and so strong about that with the first couple of issues I read that it just demanded that the approach was this versus something, I don't know. sometimes I'll fall short of words just saying like if you read the issue, I feel like the cover was on point.
Mm-hmm.
But I love doing, when there's literally nothing comic booky kind of about it, and I can really just kind of do a painting, but still focus being that face. Like I wanted like as many different emotions as I could get in this one face. And it's where I was early on digital, because this painting exists, and then I finished it for the cover. I finished that digitally. There's like hands or something reaching out and all that kind of jazz. And that painting is what, 4 foot by 4 foot.
And it's on the wall, huh?
It's on the wall. It's over there.
Mr. Easy Go Lucky wanted to know if this was a family member that modeled for this piece, or
no, this was a young model named Hope, and I believe I met her through She Would Pose, and I think she was one of Jim Mahfood has a comic called Girl Scouts, and I believe they shot a pilot for a potential TV show a few years ago, and she was one of the Girl Scouts. She was one of those characters. And then she and I got on well, and then she came in and posed for Spawn. She was Cyan in Spawn. And then later came in to pose for this one.
I've actually got Jim on for an interview next week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's it like in LA? I mean, you meet a lot of other creatives. I mean, that you wouldn't have gotten to meet when you were out in the Midwest.
Yeah, I'm amazed that I don't meet like more comic book people. Like yeah. I meet more. My wife's an actor, and so I meet more people on that kind of front. Mm-hmm. But like the comic book store I go to is, the guy is always like, "Oh, Tom Coker was just here. So and so was just here." I'm like, well, so I'm always missing them. They're here.
They're there. You're not hooking up with any of them.
It's just like when I do have, I have a couple of like consistent, like Brian Vaughn and I will grab dinner at this one restaurant, every month or so. And it's things like that you have kind of regular. I used to have more like drink and draws with a few guys and stuff like mm-hmm. that. But pandemic, shot that one a little bit. Yeah, it's funny. I don't bump into as many comic book people as I would hope to. But now I'm like getting to that point where I'm at. I would like to, pandemic easing up or whatever. I want to be a little bit more social.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But I don't think it's because they're avoiding you, Jason. I don't think so.
Oh, they're just scouting the place out. They're trying to miss me.
That's right. The comic book shop owners just sending them out the back door when they see you coming in.
It's rude.
It is. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun, man. I mean, I wish we should have done this sooner. This has been great. I mean, especially when the pandemic was in full swing. I would have been happy to promote that other the Comic-Con thing that you were doing too, because I enjoyed watching. There was so many entertaining things going on with creators during the pandemic that unlike we've probably ever seen. And, yeah, I think it's just been a blast. So yeah, we should have done this a lot sooner. I wish Mel should have put us in touch with one another earlier.
Oh, I'm glad it happened now.
Here you go. Matt from Pop Sequentialism had a question for you. Do you see much of Ken and Soy out in Pasadena these days?
Oh, Kent and Soy. No, I do not. They are out in Pasadena.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's just one of those things where like so much of my I'm building so many things right now with projects with my studio mate and all of that. Like I work a lot, and so when now I'm just at that stage when I'm done, I'm really excited just to go and let the kids run all over me. So
hey, I
don't go out as much, but I am.
Right. Well, that will change over time. Everybody's going to, I mean, the pandemic aside, I think that we are slowly getting back to normal. I'd like to think by the end of the year, if we get through the summer, I think, hopefully in the fall things are better. I mean, all the cons are at least putting dates out there. You know, like they're confident about them and everything. So, then yeah, now who is somebody scolding Vaughn for not having anything for you? Rick says, "Come on,
Oh yeah, I don't know, man. He's got his own. His own
his own
list of
projects."
people. Yeah. I feel like I enjoy when he and I get together because we tend to talk. It's really just blowing off steam and just shooting the shit. Like it's nice to, you know, when like the professionals and stuff that you do talk to, you really don't really talk about like going. It's not like a convention where you're like, hey, let's do a project together or whatever. It's just like, oh, you understand? Oh, you understand? Okay, let's just sit back and have a drink and understand.
No, it's always good to have a good drinking buddy.
Yeah,
and
always.
It was probably a good one. You know, before we end it, yeah, here's one last thing. Michael Callahan said that the cover to Queen and Country 15 was one of his all-time favorite covers. I don't know if to the series or just in general, but I thought I saw it at a con a long time ago. Simply incredible. And you know, I was looking on CAF. A lot of your, a fair amount of your Queen and Country work was actually on CAF, and is in some of the most viewed pieces of art of yours that is on the website is Queen and Country work.
Wow, that's awesome. That was, yeah. I mean, talk about one of my first work for hire gigs being working with Greg Rucka. Because I was doing my creator owned stuff or Empty Zone at Sirius Entertainment, and then I dropped out with them when the Queen and Country thing came along, and that was just, man, yeah, that was not only a really great series. There was those tons of other like personal. Oh, that's a whole other story. Never mind.
We won't dive into there since
there's plenty to talk about later.
But yeah, here I'm gonna put a page in the chat just for everybody. This is the page on CAF for Jason's work. So if you want to check out some of Jason's work that's collected and shown off on CAF, you can do so following that link. There's not enough of your work on the site. I think there's only about 180 actual artworks in people's collections on CAF. So you know, that needs to get rectified at some point. But yeah, plenty of Queen and Country in there, and then just a lot of commissions as well. Sandman, stuff from Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh yeah.
So really nice stuff in here. And you know, and for me, I publish an art annual every year in it's a little bit like Spectrum, or a lot like Spectrum. I don't know. Just because I love the medium, you know, as far as and so I've just been doing that for the last several years. So I love it when work like this gets on CAF. I like things with a fine art kind of twist to it, whether it's sequential storytelling or it's something that came from Magic the Gathering. I don't care. I love seeing painted work on our website. So you know, it's just, there's just not enough of it out there, and a lot of people always are like, can I show that on CAF? I'm like, yeah, I want to see it. You know, I want to see anything that's in that vein. I don't care. Hey, give me Gil Elfgren pinups from the 50s. I'm happy to see that too. But I just like seeing painted work on our website. And so yeah, the most of the work of yours on there is painted. So people should check that out. But all right, man, listen, I'm going to call it a wrap here, Jason. But if there is ever anything that I can do for you, you know, from PR wise, if you got something going on that you want, you know, say you do an art drop on the Big Cartel site, shoot me an email, you know, bill@comicartfans.com. You got it now, but let me know. I mean, I don't do enough work to support artists as I'd like to, and I don't know why. Yeah, you think that I'd get maybe more, you know, people would view CAF as a resource to promote stuff like that, but I primarily work directly with dealers, and I don't have a lot of artists that approach me for that kind of stuff. But I'd love to do it. So if you have anything that either I can promote, you know, whether it's a new project or it's something related to an art sale, let me know. I'd be happy to help out any way I can.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
No, my pleasure. So I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I certainly enjoyed talking to Jason, and you know, leave some comments in the comment field if you have anything you want to know. I will update the show description to your Big Cartel as well within the next 10 minutes. So Jason, thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight.
Thanks for having me, man. This was a blast. This was great.
All right. Well, everybody have a good evening. Take care.